In the most recent Nintendo Direct, they announced the inclusion of Game Boy games on Nintendo Switch Online and Game Boy Advance games on Nintendo Switch Online Plus Expansion Pass, and since they've been available, I've been really enjoying the games. I've been playing a lot of Game Boy Tetris, Mario Land 2, Minish Cap, and Gargoyle's Quest. But this got me thinking, Nintendo is going to periodically release new games to every platform on Nintendo Switch Online, so what games would I like to see in the future? Today we're going to be going over that, and I'm not just going to be going over the Game Boy games, but all 6 platforms. So let's get into the games already confirmed for Nintendo Switch Online. There have been 14 games already confirmed to be coming to Nintendo Switch Online, 5 N64, 4 Game Boy, and 5 Game Boy Advance. I'm obviously very excited about these games joining, but since they're already confirmed there isn't a lot to discuss. I felt I'd just get them out of the way at the start. The N64 games are Mario Party 3, Pokemon Stadium 2, Excitebike 64, and 1080 Snowboarding. The Game Boy games are Kirby Tilt and Tumble, which is going to be great because we can finally get gameplay footage on actual hardware without tilting a GameCube. The Pokemon Trading Card game, which is a bit of an odd choice, but whatever, and finally Oracle of Seasons and Ages. I love both of these games, more so Ages than Seasons, but they're great Zelda games in my opinion. And the GBA games that are being added are Metroid Fusion, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, which will be amazing with online play, Fire Emblem, F-Zero Maximum Velocity, and Golden Sun. Now, let's start with the first console added to Nintendo Switch Online, the NES. Since it's been around for such a long time, there really aren't a lot of NES games I'm dying to have them add, but I found 7 I think would be pretty cool. Let's get the most unrealistic one out of the way, Joy Mech Fight. Joy Mech Fight is one of Nintendo's first fighting games, and it'd be a joy to finally experience it officially, but it is a Japan exclusive. Sukapon did make it into Smash as an assist trophy though, so who knows. Speaking of some of Nintendo's first fighting games, Urban Champion is next. I really don't care if Urban Champion is on here because, well, I'll never play it, but it would help the NES section feel more complete. Currently, the only way to play it on Switch is to pay $8 for it, and that's genuinely a crime. Another pretty bad Nintendo game that's just weird it hasn't been added yet is Donkey Kong Jr. Math. Again, it's a bad game, but NES Baseball and Soccer were on NSO at launch, so we don't really see that as a reason to exclude a title. The next one is probably the game I want most on NES NSO, and that's Zoda's Revenge Star Tropics 2. I adore the Star Tropics games, and the second one is amazing. I'm just very sad I currently can't play it on Switch, especially since the first game was on it. For the third parties, I decided to go with Bubble Bobble, Bionic Commando, and Gargoyle's Quest 2. The first two are incredibly iconic NES classics, and the latter is a sequel to a game already on NSO through the Game Boy games, and a game starring the same main character, Demon's Crest, is on the SNES side of things. I love Demon's Crest and Gargoyle's Quest, and I'd love to get the excuse to finally play Gargoyle's Quest 2. There are slightly more games I would want to see in the SNES library, 9 instead of 7. So yeah, first the most obvious pick ever, Super Mario RPG. An amazing game that started the Mario RPG series, even though there are some Square Enix sized hurdles to jump, I'd love to see it on the platform, as would most people. There are only 2 other Nintendo published games here, those being Yoshi's Cookie and an SNES launch title, SimCity. I know Nintendo doesn't own SimCity, but this version is incredibly beloved and they put it out on Virtual Console before. And Yoshi's Cookie is a surprisingly good puzzle game that Nintendo really neglects to re-release for some reason. It was on the Wii Virtual Console, but it was eventually delisted in 2013, and it was announced for the Wii U Virtual Console but never released. I'm not sure if there's legal problems with this game, but I like it quite a bit and I would like to see it join. 3 games I added that I know nothing about: Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen, Chrono Trigger, and The Legend of the Mystical Ninja. I know Chrono Trigger is incredibly beloved, and I'm pretty sure the other 2 are decently beloved, so I decided to add them. Now for the 2 really bad Mega Man games, Mega Man Soccer and Mega Man and Bass. Both are awful, but I want basically all of Mega Man's history available on Switch, and X Legacy Collection 2 included the games people hate, so yeah. And while Mega Man and Bass is a Japan-only game on the NES, on the SNES, it's better than porting the GBA version, which is surprisingly even worse. And finally, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, a cult classic game that I'm sure many people would be happy about. Most of the obvious N64 games have already been added or are going to be added in the future, but I found 10 I'd love to see. Super Smash Bros. And Donkey Kong 64 are two really basic ones that haven't been announced yet, and I'm not really sure why Smash Bros. Hasn't, but since Donkey Kong 64 was made by Rare, there might be some more paperwork to do for that game. Diddy Kong Racing is next, a racing game even better than Mario Kart 64. Fight me. Bomberman 64 and Bomberman 64 The Second Attack are next, and both are pretty enjoyable 3D action platformers. Mega Man 64 is another part of Mega Man's history I'd love to see on Switch, but unlike the two we've discussed so far, this one is actually pretty good. Perfect Dark, Banjo-Tooie, and Conker's Bad Fur Day are the remaining Rare titles, and Ogre Battle 64 looks pretty neat. I honestly don't know much about the Sega Genesis, but the Nintendo Switch Online library seems to be going for more obscure Genesis games, not including more obvious ones like Sonic 1, which I can appreciate. I'm going to be continuing this tradition with 9 games, starting with Devil Crash MD, a pretty fun looking pinball game. Granada and Elemental Master are next, 2 games I know absolutely nothing about, but maybe someone will be hyped. Rocket Knight Adventures, The Ooze, and Pulseman are now available, and these are 3 obscure Genesis games I actually really like. Flicky seems like a decently interesting Sonic spin-off, and Columns 3 is just a pretty good falling block puzzler. The Game Boy library is next, and I adore original Game Boy games. They're so unbelievably charming, and since there's only 7 games on the service right now, with 4 to come, I was able to find 36 games I'd love to see join. These games are Mario Land 1. Pretty obvious, and I'm very surprised it wasn't in the starting selection. Some Kirby games are Block Ball, Pinball Land, and Star Stacker. I'm honestly not a huge fan of Star Stacker, but the others are excellent. Dr. Mario on Game Boy actually sold more than the NES version, and Alleyway was a pretty fun breakout clone. Mario's Picross is excellent, and even though we have the SNES version on NSO, you can't go wrong with more Picross. Wario Land 1 and 2 are excellent little platformers, and Tokitori is a pretty great puzzle platformer. Speaking of puzzle platformers, Donkey Kong 94 is my favorite game on the console, and the 3 Donkey Kong Land games are a nightmare fuel, but it would be cool to see them nonetheless. All 5 Mega Man games, 2 and 3 are pretty bad, but I adore 4 and 5, and 1 is pretty alright. Kid Icarus got a sequel on Game Boy, and Mole Mania is a pretty charming puzzle game that got its start on the platform. Revenge of the Gator is an excellent pinball game. Game & Watch Gallery 1 and 2 would make sense since the 3rd game is on here. Mario Golf and Tennis are pretty charming sports RPGs, and the 2 Mega Man Extreme games are pretty mediocre, but more Mega Man can never hurt anyone. Except maybe Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Super Mario Deluxe has a calendar, so it needs to be on here, and Pokemon Puzzle Challenge is quite excellent. Of course, there's Pokemon with 6 games on the original Game Boy, those being Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal. If I had to guess, I think they just put Crystal and Yellow on here, because it'd be pretty hard to implement a way to trade between the games, but who knows, so I put all 6 of them on the list. And finally, Game Boy Advance. I decided on 24 games, and those are Metroid Zero Mission. Nintendo has seemingly been focusing on Metroid a lot more as of late, with Dread, Prime Remastered, Metroid 2 on NSO, and Fusion being promised for the future of NSO, so we don't see why Zero Mission shouldn't be on the service. Wario Land 4 is amazing and definitely deserves to be on here, same with other great platformers like Drill Dozer and Kirby Nightmare Dreamland. Drill Dozer could even take advantage of the Switch's HD Rumble. Sonic Advance 1 through 3 are mostly great games, and while it's incredibly unlikely, as a massive Kingdom Hearts fan, I'd love it if the original Chain of Memories came to the platform. Some RPGs now. Fire Emblem and the Sacred Stones, Advance Wars, Mario Tennis Power Tour, and Mario Golf Advance Tour would be really cool. And similar to last time, I included all 5 mainline Pokemons here. Fire Red, Leaf Green, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And I included the spin-off title Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team. Donkey Kong King of Swing is pretty mediocre, but I'd love to see it. Mario Pinball Land and Mario Party Advance are pretty tart, but I'd similarly love to play them. Mario vs. Donkey Kong isn't as great as Donkey Kong 94, but it's similarly excellent, and F-Zero GP Legend is surprisingly amazing. And of course, Mother 3. If Nintendo were to finally translate it, they'd definitely sell it on its own like Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, but I can dream. And yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. And tell me games you'd love to see in the comments, whether it be ones I missed, or just ones you thought were cool ideas. See you later, y'all.